So in this video, I'm going to talk a little bit about working in the wig industry, as well as just like helpful like resume and portfolio tips and just kind of like general advice when it comes to working in the theater and kind of just like entertainment industry in general. So I feel like when people think of wigs and makeup for theater, sometimes it can seem like a little bit confusing because kind of depending on like where you work, there's a lot of different ways to refer to the person that might be doing the wigs and hair and the person who might be doing the makeup. Really generally speaking, unless that's like a really highly specialized makeup, most theaters and like things in like theatrical situations, the performers are going to learn how to do their own makeup, or at least like the bulk of their own makeup. Obviously, if there's like a special prosthetic or it's just like a specialty makeup in general, or if there's like a fake tattoo application or something is like airbrush or something like that, or like a bald cap, a performer's not going to be able to do that themselves, so there might be somebody to do it. But more often than not, the performers are going to be learning their own makeup. So a lot of times there's not as much opportunity to be doing like tons and tons of makeup all of the time in the wig and makeup industry. More often than not, you're actually working a lot more with wigs and hair than anything else, which that was something I didn't really know when I went to school for this, just because I was really interested in makeup. I didn't know much about any of this when I started school. I really didn't know what I was getting into when I went to the theater conservatory that I went to, which I went to the one at Webster University in St. Louis. They do have a great wig and makeup design program and just like a good like technical theater and musical theater and acting programs there as well. But yeah, I didn't really know what I was getting into. So that's probably like my first bit of advice that I can give as far as like working in this industry goes. You need to make sure that you kind of like know what you're getting into. Do a lot more research than I did when I was going to school. I think a lot of more people are kind of like realizing like the importance of wig and makeup design in this industry. So I think that there's just like more information and more programs that are out there than when I went to school. But make sure you know exactly what you're getting into. I mean, it ended up working out really well for me. I struggled a lot in school, but I think that's something that everybody is going to struggle at some point, just because you're going to be learning a lot of new things and you're going to be like working constantly. And really, it's probably not going to be easy. If it is really easy for you, just know that everybody around you might not be having a really easy time. So just kind of always keep that in mind, that you don't really know what your peers are going through. So always make sure that you're just kind of like aware of that, and so that you can be like conscious of what other people around you might be feeling. So yeah, so that's probably like my first advice. Make sure you know exactly what you're getting into if you do want to go into the wig and makeup industry. If you really just want to do makeup and you don't want anything to do with wigs, you don't want anything to do with hair, I honestly, and like I can say this as like someone who is like teaching people wig and makeup and will eventually like be a part of like a wig and makeup program, if you don't want to do hair and you just want to do makeup, I don't think that you should be going to school at these programs that are going to be making you do a lot of like wig and hair work. Me personally, I do prefer makeup over like hair and wigs, but I do still like hair and wigs enough to where I'm like happy with the decision that I made. But if you strictly like, and I think this is what I see most often, if you just want to do special effects makeup and you want nothing to do with hair, it would be great for you to learn how to ventilate, which is what you would learn in like a lot of wig and makeup design programs, just because facial hair really is going to be the responsibility of makeup artists, which I don't think a lot of people also realize that, but it is. If it's on the face, basically, that's the makeup artist's responsibility. I would really recommend, if that's what you want, go to either make sure you go to a school that does a lot of makeup, because not every school is created equally, or maybe just go to special effects school. I think a lot of people feel like they have to like continue on with theater, continue on and get a degree, just because that's kind of like the formula that we're like given, I think as kids, that like that's how you live your life and that's how you should do things. But I also think that there are a lot of different ways to get to where you want to go, and if you just have a feeling that something is not going to be right for you, or if you're trying to force yourself to love whatever it is that you're going to school for, I would really like sit back and like think about it, just because it's a big commitment that you're doing. Anything is going to be difficult, but if you feel like you're going to be totally miserable, it might not be worth it. And just make sure that, yeah, like whatever program it is that you're committing to, you really do enjoy all parts of it, just because if you're going to go to like a conservatory, which like most theater schools are going to be more of a conservatory setting, you are going to be in it like 24 hours a day for 4 years. So you need to make sure that you love what you do, and there's going to be a lot of times where all you're going to have is like your passion to get you through things, and if you're not passionate about it, you might have a really hard time getting through school. So not to be, I feel like, totally like down on everything or to be negative, but I think it's just something like I really didn't know what I was getting into when I started school, and like I said, it worked out perfectly fine, and I've had a lot of really amazing opportunities, and obviously like I'm teaching now, the thing that I went to school for, so it's all worked out, but you should know probably a little bit more than I did what it is that you're getting into. So this video is probably gonna be like a lot of crazy tangents of me going off on things like that, but I guess that's advice number one. So then other things that you might be wondering about, so we'll go in and out, I guess, of it, like advice and then just like talking about working in the industry, because this is just how my like crazy stream of consciousness lectures go, I guess. So things that you might be doing if you are pursuing like wig and makeup design, or if you're like a costume designer and you also have an interest in doing wigs and makeup, you might end up wig designing for a show. So if you're the wig designer, that means that you are the one who's in charge of like the artistic side of all of it. So you come together with the costume designer, and based on the costume designer's renderings and just like research in general, you two kind of come together to figure out what the hair should look like, the wig should look like, the facial hair, the makeup, everything. So you're still responsible for like your own renderings and your own research and kind of figuring out how you want things to be, but you also have to understand that this job is all about collaboration, so it's not going to be 100%, at least in my own experience. Obviously I haven't worked everywhere, but from my own personal experience and what I've been taught is that you are always going to be like collaborating with the costume designer. Now if you are the costume designer and you're also designing the wigs, then obviously it's all up to you, but I think a big part of being a wig and makeup designer is understanding that you are working with other people. It is not just your design that is going on stage. You're kind of, I feel like that final thing that just kind of like finishes the production. So it's like there's like the paint and the set and the lighting and the costumes, and then like the makeup and hair, I feel like sort of like completes everything. So you still have like a really, really important role, but you're not always like there might be times when you just like you don't get your way because it's not what your costume designer wants, and it can be frustrating, but it's also important to understand, yes, you should always stand up for yourself if you really have like a strong belief about something, but it's also a good lesson in collaboration and understanding that these shows don't come together because one person wants one thing. It's a whole bunch of people working together for like one common like idea or design. So it's not just going to be your own show. If you want it to be your own show, then I recommend you design everything or try to figure things out like that, right? So if you're going to be a wig designer, you're going to have that artistic like freedom and fun, but then just also know that the costume designer is going to be kind of like your best friend in this situation. Now you might have some that are just like, I don't know anything about wigs. Like I've worked with people like that and they just kind of let me do what I want. And then you have other people that are going to tell you exactly what they want. So you do need to be ready for both scenarios, but it's just something, again, I didn't know that when I went to school. And to be fair, like I think like when I was going to school, there were only 3 schools that offered this major, so it was still just kind of like a new thing in the industry in general. So I think it's still probably getting figured out, but I think that there is a little bit more respect, and maybe in the future, wig and makeup designers will, you know, always get everything that they want, but you have to think that like if you're like hair and makeup and like wigs and makeup, if it doesn't match what the costume designer is putting on them, you two can't be designing separate shows. You need to come together and have something that looks good together. So that's like one really common job. Not every place is going to have a budget for a wig designer, so a lot of times I just get called in to help like teach tattoo cover or teach like a specialty makeup or something like that, or like design this prosthetic and like put it on a person, and then you're there once and then you leave and they do it without you. So that's one thing too, is that unless a place has like a designated like wig shop, that might be like you might be doing more than that. Like I've worked places where I was like the wig designer and I guess like the wig master, because I was the one like styling everything, and I was also the wig run crew and also wardrobe. So it just kind of like every place is going to be a little bit different. So you do kind of have to have like a lot of different skills, I think, too, in this industry. And then so one other thing I just mentioned, so the term like wig master and like wig mistress, that gets thrown around a lot. I think, one, it's hilarious. I love that we still use these kind of like, I guess to me, I feel like they're more like traditional, like old-timey words and ways to refer to things. But sometimes in a place you're going to have like a wig designer, and then you're going to have somebody that's like referred to as the wig master or wig mistress. Some places those two words are like synonymous. Some places keep it separate. But basically this is going to be the person that, so sometimes they might be designing it, but then they're really going to be the ones that are in charge of like building and buying, and just kind of like realizing the entire design. But again, that's sort of like, depending on where you are, like that could be the same person that's also designing everything. And then you're going to have like a wig run crew. So sometimes the person that's like in charge of putting everything together and realizing everything is not the one that's actually running the show. In some situations, designers and wig masters might not be running shows. In other situations, they might be. I've worked in both situations. When I was in school, my program was so small, even if it was a show I designed it, I did the maintenance, and I ran the show. So it's like, it just really depends where you're at and how big of a crew and how big of a budget you have too. But wig run crew, like these would be the people that would be putting the wigs on and off during the runs of shows. They would be the ones sometimes doing maintenance, other times they might have other crew members come in just for maintenance. But you would be the one that's sort of like in it. And then depending on whether or not you're working on something that's union, if you are on a wig and makeup crew and if it's not union at all, you are probably also doing wardrobe. But if you are working on a show that is union, so something that's more like along the lines of like Broadway, or like the Broadway and Chicago stuff, I'm from Chicago, so that's like what my experience is, you are really like, you are not supposed to like, be working. One, you can't work on those shows if you're not union, and you're not supposed to be like openly working on them, even if you have, which is something I've done in the past, where I like did some wig maintenance for a show that was definitely like a union show. So I wasn't allowed to work like on the actual like premises. I had to like come pick up the wigs and do them elsewhere and then bring them back. And then the person that was the wardrobe attendant, she was not allowed to touch the wigs at all whatsoever. So all they had was like me and one other person that were doing wig maintenance like off site, and then she was responsible to making sure that like the wigs were there, but she technically was not allowed to do any of the like maintenance or anything, even if it was just something like really simple. So things can definitely get tricky depending on like the situation that you're working in, but usually if it's a non-union show, things might be a little bit more like fluid. Like I was a wardrobe intern at a theater in Chicago, and not only was I doing like wardrobe, I was applying a toupee to somebody, and then I also at one point had to like bring a light in. I'm sure there's like a more technical word for that, but I also had to do like a weird like lighting thing too. So if you are like a non-union worker, a lot of times you might end up just kind of having to do a lot of random stuff. So kind of be prepared for that if you were ever on any kind of run crew. You might kind of get thrown around a little bit, unless of course you are working on something union, then you will most likely not. Other places, so if you're like kind of outside the theatrical world, things like the name for things changes a little bit. So if it's like the film industry, then you might be called like a key artist. So there's like key makeup artists and like key hairstylists. Those are going to be the people that are sort of like, I guess like the wig master, wig mistress, I guess, of like the film world, right? So they're the ones that are like the head of that department. If you are planning on doing like hair and wigs, more specifically like hair though, if you want to do hair for film, you really need to get your cosmetology license, just because technically you are not allowed to like cut hair, dye hair. You really, I don't even think you can probably like style someone's hair on film unless you have a license. So that gets really tricky, just because a lot of times in theater, like most of us don't have cosmetology licenses. I don't know if that's something that's going to change in the future, but just know that if you do want to work on like hair and wigs for film, if you can get your cosmetology license at some point, that's definitely not going to hurt you. So far for makeup, depending on the state that you live in, you don't always have to be licensed. So in Illinois, currently you don't need a license to be a makeup artist. With the current state of the world and everything that's going on, I don't know if that's going to change, just because people are going to become a lot more concerned about sanitation. So I do know a lot of makeup artists that get aesthetics licenses, but currently, at least in the state that I live in, it's not necessarily required for you to have it, but it never hurts you. So if you do have an interest in either like hair cutting and coloring, or you have an interest in like skincare too, and you're able to go and get that license, it's not a bad idea. The more education and like the more like like valid. So there's a lot of like weird little certificates in schools out there, especially in this industry, that are maybe not like the most legit, but getting like some kind of a license like that is always going to help you, and it just makes you able to take even more jobs. So that is also something to kind of keep in mind. Other places again too, so there's like at wig stores, sometimes there are people like who are at like just these wig stores, which like anyone can go to, that are more specialized in how to like fit wigs and like cut wigs, and just kind of make sure that they're right for whoever is buying them. And then at the same time at like regular salons, sometimes there are people who are specialized in wigs and wig making there too. So that would be another way that like if you had your cosmetology license, you could still really just be working in wigs, but you would be able to do it in like a salon setting as well. Sometimes you might be making wigs for people who are hair loss patients, so a lot of times that could be people that like have cancer, so they've lost their hair to like chemotherapy, they could have alopecia. There's a whole like list of reasons, right, where somebody could have some kind of hair loss going on, but you just have to know that if you are working with those people, that's kind of probably going to be like a different grade of like wigs and wig care and everything than you might be used to working to in theater, because the materials that you're working with really have to be like very fine and very gentle, and they can't do anything to irritate the skin. So that's another direction that you could go in. There's plenty of people that just wear wigs in their everyday life, and a lot of like celebrities I think now have a lot of people that are like their personal like wig and hairstylist, just so you could be somebody's like personal makeup artist. So that's another like path that you could go down. If you're more into like the special effects side of things, being somebody that either makes like ventilated pieces for like special effects shops, or being somebody who punches hair, which is sort of like ventilating, but basically it's just like a needle and you kind of like stab the hair into whatever it is that you're doing. A lot of times that is really needed for like the film and TV, and even just like the amusement park like entertainment industry, just because a lot of times there's things that like require like animals or like bodies or things like that, where you can't use like an actual animal or an actual body, but it needs to look realistic. So they'll have somebody like punch hair into something. So that's another way you could go. Otherwise, there's like Renaissance fairs, people who do like historical reenactments will need things done. Cosplay, the horror industry, drag, amusement parks, which I mentioned before. There's so many different ways that you could go. As far as like this career goes, like I have friends that like own their own like wig rental company and wig design company. I have friends who just like freelance. I know someone who works on the Cirque du Soleil and who's a wig attendant. There's work like on cruise ships, there's work at theme parks, there's so many different places that you can work. So I think sometimes like a lot of people try to act like careers like this are maybe not like the most real, and like, oh, like I know people used to say that to me all the time. It's just like, what are you gonna do with that? Like, what are you gonna do with, like, I have a degree, like I have a BFA in wig and makeup design, and like people usually just look at me like I'm crazy. But really, like, there's so many things that you could do with degrees like this, and just with like theater degrees in general, that I think are maybe not always like the most obvious, but you definitely shouldn't feel limited in anything that you're doing. And on that note too, I remember when I was in school, I had an interview once for an internship, and they gave me a really hard time about not knowing whether I would prefer to work like strictly in wardrobe for the rest of my life or work in wigs and makeup for the rest of my life. And I mean, I was like 21, 22 maybe, and they just gave me, I think it was like 21, yeah, they gave me the hardest time about it. And while I do understand that like you at some point you're gonna have to like make a choice, I don't think that you should ever feel like the choice that you're making is going to be the choice that you have to make for the rest of your life. The best advice I ever received from one of my professors in college was that you can always go back to something, right? So if you choose to follow one path for like a little while, nothing is saying that you can't go back and go back to what else that you love, right? So I've always been really torn between like English and literature and like writing and like dramaturgy, and like the sort of like wig and makeup design and side of things, and those are very different ends of the spectrum, and I always kind of felt like I would have to make a choice between the two, and like for a while obviously like I have, and I've been doing more in wigs and makeup, but just like my professor said, that doesn't mean that I can't go back to the other thing. So I think it can be really scary sometimes, and that we're forced to kind of like make these really intense decisions like so young and so quickly. But like I have friends that are like, you know, like one of my best friends, like he's a costume designer, but he does wigs and makeup, and he's an amazing like a draper and makes things for people, and like really I feel like people like that can just show you that like you can do a lot of different things, and like maybe for like one period of your life you're only going to be doing one of them, but that doesn't mean that you're still not capable of doing the other one. So that's something that I think is really important, and people freak out a lot about, and I just don't agree when they try to make you feel like you can only do one thing and pick one thing. So I hope no one ever makes you feel that way, and yeah, just know that you can always like go back and choose something else if you want to. Other really important things as far as just like working really in any industry is your resume and like portfolio. So for your resume, make sure that you're keeping it professional. Like when you do work in like the theater and arts industry, like we do have like a little bit more freedom to have like color and everything on our resumes, but it should still be professional. So I know like on mine I have like just like a little bit of green, because green is my favorite color. My hair is often green too, so it's just like you can have like the little bits of your personality without it being like too like crazy. And then make sure with your resumes too, theater resumes are kind of like in a different world, I feel like, than like a lot of the typical resume templates you might see. So when you're making yours, always base it off of somebody else who's in your industry. Ask like a teacher or like a mentor or something like, hey, can I see what your resume format is? Because ours are a little bit different. I know like my resume looks nothing like some of my friends' resumes who work in other career fields. You want to make sure things are chronological when you have them listed on there. You want to have like your most recent work should be first. You're going to want to have your skills section, and make sure whatever is in your skills section, don't put things in there that you can't actually do, right? So I think that a lot of times in school we are taught how to do something once and you might never pick it up again. But if you don't know how to do it, then it should not be in your skills section. So just because you did something once, you maybe retained it, but if you haven't done it in forever, and then someone like I know like I learned how to airbrush on one of my internships, but like I haven't airbrushed really since then. So like if I put that on my resume and someone hired me specifically because I could do that and then asked me to do that day one, I wouldn't be able to do it. So you just want to make sure that like, yes, like you want to show off everything that you do know, but do not list something on there that you would not be prepared to do if somebody asked you to do it. You want to make sure that you have references. Don't just assume that you can use somebody as a reference. You want to make sure that you ask them first. I'm sure most people are going to be okay with it, but people always prefer to know. If you are putting your resume like on your website or something, I always take my phone number off of it and I don't put my references on there. I just put references available upon request, because that way you're not like putting anybody's personal information out there. You're not putting your phone number out there. I really don't recommend that. I was always taught not to do that. You really shouldn't have like your address or anything on there. You do want to have some kind of like privacy, just because once something is out there, it's out there forever. So like be conscious of that. Always make sure that you're proofreading things. I think a lot of times people don't proofread stuff, but really it's important. Like when I've interned at other places, when they've got applications in and like they've gone through and like read their resumes and read their cover letters, and just like people will like tear stuff apart if you do have any like weird errors like that. So just always make sure, ask your teachers, mentors, your friends, just have someone else look it over, just because sometimes when you're working on something for so long, you just can't catch certain things. And then too, since I just mentioned it, I always include a cover letter when I apply for something, even if it doesn't always ask for it. I think it's a good idea to take the extra time just to write a letter about, you know, like why you think you're a good fit for this job. What is your experience? That way it makes you like look up whoever it is that you're like directly applying to, and just makes it like a little bit more personal. So usually like their address and like information and stuff will go on there. I try to coordinate mine to my resume, so my resume and cover letter have like the same kind of like lines and heading on it, and my business cards do as well. So it's kind of nice if you have all of your like, I guess like promotional material, for lack of better words, if it all looks kind of similar and it all fits into the same world, then you can kind of have it all like be like a nice little like package that you can give someone. So like when I go to jobs, even if I assume that they've printed out my resume, and like everything is very digital now, I still print mine out on resume paper. I print out my cover letter on resume paper, and I like put it together with my business card, just so that way if they don't have it, or if like sometimes like multiple people will interview you and you're not ready for that, I can hand it to them. So I think that that's a good idea. I always have like some kind of little like nice folder or like something to carry things in. I have my portfolio digital, I have a website, and I have my portfolio digital as well, and like a slideshow. That's probably something that most people have now, but when I was in school, that was like something that people were like just starting to do. But I think that's a really good idea and a nice thing to have. I think having a professional website is still really important. When we were putting our portfolios together, not that many people like had Instagram or anything yet, and it just like wasn't as big of a deal when I was in college. Now I think a lot more people, depending on the industry, people kind of view it as more important than a website, but to me, I still think that having both is a good idea, because you're going to have people that are interviewing you that don't have social media and like don't know how to use it. And not that there's anything wrong with having your portfolio on it, I just think it's a good idea. either have that like digital backup so that you can show that, or have a website as well, because I think a lot of times in some situations websites are going to be a little bit more respected than like an Instagram page or something. Not to put like any hate on that, but just me personally, I think I kind of like to see websites. Like when I interview people to work for me at my store, like I like to see that people have like websites a lot of times. Obviously not everyone's going to have one, but I think it does kind of help. Especially if you're ever planning on working like an educational setting, I think it definitely is a good idea to have. But yeah, I think your most important thing is to proofread stuff, proofread things on your website, proofread every email that you send people. Always be polite in emails. If you're ever like upset when somebody sends you something for work, do not immediately respond to it. Like take your time to respond to it. Same with like don't respond to like a voicemail if it made you mad. Always take your time, and like, because if you say something wrong, you really don't want to like ruin your chances for something just because you were like having a bad day or they had a bad day and said something mean to you. So always make sure that you kind of like compose yourself before you respond to things. And yeah, so that's kind of like, I guess like a quick wrap up on like resumes and portfolios and websites and different jobs you can go on. So this was like a whole bunch of different tangents I feel like in one video. But hopefully that kind of helps a little bit. I think all of this can be like very overwhelming and scary when you're first starting in school, but I think you know, like putting your portfolio together like little by little, and like not saving your website until the last minute, and not saving your resume till like the last minute, that's all really good. So I think like I know like they didn't really start talking to us a ton about a lot of that stuff until like senior year, and I think that if you work on it all the way through school, that just makes it so much less overwhelming when you get to like your final portfolio reviews and stuff. So I think if it's something you can like keep up with, that's always a good idea. Just make sure you're always like staying humble and like being kind, just because the people that you're in school with and the people that you're working with, you know, these are going to be the ones that they could be your coworkers for the rest of your life. And that doesn't mean that you have to be best friends with everybody, but you need to be able to be respectful to people, just because you're going to be put in situations where you don't necessarily like who you're working with, but you just have to be able to work through it. Like obviously you should never be put in a position where someone is mistreating you, or doing something that is completely wrong, but sometimes personalities just don't get together or just don't get along. So you need to make sure that you know how to like compose yourself and be professional, just because if people find you like unpleasant to work with, they're not going to keep asking you to work for them, because after a while what's going to happen, especially in theater, is that like you probably won't have to apply for jobs anymore. People are just going to ask you like, hey, like I heard that like you're good at this, or like, oh, I need a wig designer for this show, like great, let's do that. So word of mouth is a great way to get jobs, but it's also a great way to not get jobs. So just be careful, try to be as kind as possible and as respectful as possible. Everybody has bad days, but everybody is aware of that. But yeah, hope you enjoyed this one, and I wish you all the best of luck in your careers.